Greetings, fellow Pokemon trainers. Pearl here. So, the reason why I'm recording this video is because I was asked to do a Reg I viability ranking for the Smogon VR thread, and I have been kind of procrastinating with that, so I figured I would just record a video of myself putting my thoughts together, like for personal reference more so than anything else. But if this turns out okay, I might just go ahead and upload it. Who knows? So, one thing I will say, and this will be very obvious as you watch the video, is that this is completely unscripted. I will just be looking at the mons, going through all of them, and ranking them like just mostly vibes, but I will also set myself some soft criteria. I will start with the restrictors because those are the guys that kind of dictate what else is actually good in the format for the most part. I will separate them. These will just be SA, B, C, and then these will have more rankings because there are way more Pokemon and it's kind of hard to distinguish between them. These are like kind of redundant, like A minus B plus distinction. So I'll just put them together and decide which like where I want to put each mon later when I actually fill it out on the spreadsheet. But that should be it. The other thing I wanna touch upon is that the other thing I will touch upon is that like I think that the format will still evolve a lot. At the time of recording this, we've just had 3 regionals in the past weekend, or like 1 regional and 2 special events. I think that's it. So there's a lot of information to go by. So this is like more of a 5th impression than a 1st impression. But the truth of the matter is that I've never actually played a double restricted format. I've played a lot of Reg G, but that is kind of a different dynamic from what I've felt so far. So this will also be kind of like a fresh look on things because I've been playing VGC for a while now. I've done some things Pokemon. I don't like flaunting that. Like, just listen to me and hear what I have to say, I guess. But this is my first time playing a double restricted format, so it won't be like a very experienced take on the matter. But without further ado, I will just get to it so the video doesn't turn out too long. So, the first thing I want to say, without a doubt, is that this guy right here is by far the best Pokemon in the format, in my opinion. And what I am about to say is kind of obscene, honestly, like even to myself, even though I fully believe it, is that this guy is even better in Reg I than it was in Reg G, which is crazy because it was already arguably the best restricted in G. But in I, there are a couple of things that change for it that I think are like make it even crazier, which is the fact like it synergizes with so many of these guys so well. There are so many random combinations that you have to respect and account for in the builder that it's honestly kind of crazy. Like, Ho is good with the guy, Lunala's good, Zama's good, Groudon can work, and even Kyogre went undefeated in Swiss and Utrecht special event. Like, the amount of things you can do with this guy is honestly so crazy. And like, it does not even have that many answers as far as like restricted and unrestricted go. Like its matchup spread is like just it's weak to Rilla. It's got kind of weak to where is it? It's kind of weak to Chien Pao. If it's Focus Sash and Jolly Nature, which not all of them are. And aside from that, like you can kind of always trade favorably into literally everything else. And even Rilla has to watch out for things like Prio Block or even like smart positional play, so it's not linear by any means. Like it's kind of messed up how good this guy is, honestly, and the results so far really corroborate that. It's just a crazy pocket monster. Another thing I wanted to say, like I just remembered what I wanted to say at the beginning, is that this is going to be like a more of an advanced video. Like I won't be touching upon things like this guy has a really high attack stat, or this guy has really high special attack, high speed, whatever. Like this will be more of a how things synergize with each other in the context of the format. If there's some demand for more entry level videos, I might look into doing that. I don't have much time to actually create content, so but we'll see. That I just wanted to say that because I don't want people to think that like that I'll be talking about like all of the stats and like all of the moves that these guys get. It won't really be that kind of video. That would be way longer. So, moving on. This guy, I think, is the best. And what I'm about to do next is a bit controversial, but this will be the only guy I will be putting in S tier. I think every other restricted is considerably below Miraidon because like for example, I think this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy would be my A tier for restricteds. I think all of them are really good, and I think like these two could even move up to S as the format develops. It's like still relatively early to tell. These guys could be S if comp developments turn out favorably for them. If down the line you can build Kali Zama in a way that consistently beats all the Miraidon comps, I think it could be an S tier pairing. But as it is at this point in time, I think they're more fit for A rank. And I think these two as well. The thing with Zama and Lunala is that in Reg G, the fact that they have so much of their power budget allocated into utility and defense kind of held them back from being the dominant forces that they're shaping up to be in Reg I. But right now, I don't really have to worry about that because you have two guys to pick up the slack. Like, this guy gets to run Wide Guard, gets to run Trick Room, and then Miraidon is just pumping out damage, making up for Lunala's deficit in that regard. And even then, I would even say it's a deficit because Lunala and Zama, they hit so goddamn hard. Even though, like, the main draw there is the Wide Guard, the Trick Room, the more utility focused options. The Kalis. Oh, another quick disclaimer. I won't really be ordering the mons within tiers. Just for context, like I don't think this guy's better than this guy, so on and so forth. What I think is like kind of awkward about Shadow Rider, besides like the fact that it always has a target on its back. Like if you look at stats and moves and all that stuff alone, like this guy is here, like even above Miraidon, I'd say. But because we cannot analyze formats just by the stats of the mons, I think it goes below Miraidon due to the fact that teams are very conscious of covering CSR. Like 2 dark types, 1 normal type. It's not unheard of for teams to be like that prepared into Shadow Rider. And it's not like it's hard because many normal and dark types, primarily dark types, are really good. So you cannot really like just throw CSR into a team and expect to win by clicking Astral Barrage, whereas Electro Drift is a constant one-shot button, even with Grassy Terrain sometimes, or Ice Spinner going before its attack. CSR is a lot harder to actually get the ball rolling. I would say it's still pretty goddamn broken on paper and a lot of times in practice as well. But it's no Miraidon, is what I'm trying to get at. And Ice Rider, I think, is like kind of in the same boat in Reg I. In Reg G, it was like a bit easier to get Glacial Lances off because like Lunala, once it became good at the end of the format, didn't really run Wide Guard, and Zama had a much higher opportunity cost when it came to clicking Wide Guard. Because it means that your restricted is not actually putting damage on the board, it's just there to neuter the other restricted. But right now, I think it's a lot harder to click G-Lance, and the Ice Riders are adapting nicely to that. We had Leech Sheet Ice Rider performing really well at the events we've had so far, and I am not sure how good it was going to end up being in the long haul. But right now, I would say it's pretty strong and a very smart adaptation by Ice Rider players. But the Glacial Lance button itself is weaker, and that's why I'm having it in A. It has crazy synergy with Miraidon, but a problem I have with that is that like you do not really have a restricted pairing for Ice Rider that is like dominant where you actually get to run Amoonguss, which I think is kind of a drawback because Amoonguss Ice Rider was like so strong in Reg G, and right now it's a lot harder to build in a way that uses that. Like the closest thing would be like Ice Rider Kyogre. I think Ice Rider Groudon can work too, maybe. And for A tier, I think this is how I'd keep it in essence. And then below these guys, I put Kyogre, I put Ho-Oh. I think like this is going to be another controversial take, but right now I think even though it won Down Under, I don't think Koraidon is like as strong as these guys. The way I described it a couple days ago when I was like talking about Reg I with some friends in call is that running Koraidon is like running Annihilate as you're restricted, which is like kind of a stupid comparison. I get it. It's not even true 100%. But it's a Pokemon that in order to trade positively into a lot of scenarios, it has to mash Flare Blitz and then it's also running life orb a lot of times. So this guy is kind of like just suiciding to to put damage on boards, and I think that feels kind of bad and more like when you actually want to play a more sustained game. So that means there's a certain level of inflexibility with Koraidon builds, because like Koraidon wants to go with these two guys generally, CSR and Lunala. It does not really pair amazingly with any of the others. I think Ice Rider Koraidon is something that a couple of friends of mine have messed around with, and it can be good, but it feels more like a 2-2-2 than an actual like balanced comp, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But like he could be here. I think as the format develops and more people figure out like proper builds with Koraidon, I think it could go higher. But for now, this is my opinion on it. Kyogre is weird, and since we're talking about Kyogre, here's another thing I forgot to say at the beginning, is that this tier list is going to be more focused on best of 3 open team sheet gameplay, because like in CTS the power dynamics shift a little, and besides that, like this is a slate for OTS. If it's CTS, like this number triples. There's so many Pokemon that you can use to cheese wins in close team sheet that it's like kind of crazy, honestly. So Kyogre is a Pokemon that suffers a lot from the transition from BO1 to BO3, because a lot of Kyogre's threat in BO1 is like not knowing what its set is. Like they open Kyogre something, and then like you're expecting to outspeed the Kyogre, but then the Kyogre just smashes Terra Water Spout with Choice Scarf right from turn 1, kills both guys, and like you kind of get locked out of play the game right there. But in OTS, like you know what the guy is going to do, and that makes it a lot harder to use efficiently, or like as oppressively at least. I still think it can be fine. Like it's seen a lot of success with Ice Rider, and something I like a lot about Ice Rider Kyogre is that it's a composition that gets to employ Amoonguss, which is really strong in my opinion. Like Amoonguss, I will talk a lot about Amoonguss down the line once we get to the unrestricted tier list, because I think it's in a really interesting position in a format. And speaking of Amoonguss, I forgot to put Turtle here as well. I'm a bit of a Turtle hater, but I would not put it in C. I think that would be pretty disingenuous on my end. I will talk a bit about it a bit more later. Ho-Oh is a weird Pokemon. I think Ho-Oh is like really good, but it's also very linear. Like it's kind of a one-trick pony in the sense like its power budget comes from its synergy with Miraidon. Like Miraidon Ho is like really cool. Joey Pokien performed really well with it at Milwaukee, and it also had a good showing at Utrecht special event last weekend. I think it is a strong restricted pairing, but it's like the only thing Ho-Oh goes on like in a way that feels sustainable long term in the context of the format. Like I've seen Koraidon Ho-Oh, the team gets 6-0'd by Amoonguss. I've seen Ho-Oh Terapagos, and I don't love that honestly. I think people will mess around more with Ho-Oh, but at the end of the day, I feel like you'll always end up coming back to Miraidon Ho-Oh. That's why Ho-Oh is strong in my opinion. And Terapagos, I think, is in a similar position because like its power come from its synergy with Calyrex Shadow Rider, more so like Sash Calyrex with utility moves, Pollen Puff, Wisp Encore, Disable, etc. It does not really go amazingly with any of the other restricteds. Like Koraidon Ho was a thing in early format. I think it's kind of died down. I'm not really expecting to see a resurgence. I could totally be wrong on this though. But like Terapagos, in my opinion, the one thing that elevates his like the one reason why it's not here and it's here instead is because it's one of the few comps in the format that I think actually gets to run Amoonguss, and Amoonguss guy is really disrespected right now. And I think like CSR Terapagos being able to use it to, I'd say its fullest potential, because like you get grassy terrain, you get Terra, you get Terraform Zero. Like you actually get to click spores into Miraidon, and that can be really oppressive considering that Miraidon's usual counterplay to Spore Maneuver is Electric Terrain and nothing else. Like very little grass types are used on those teams. Ursaluna kind of counts as a Mungus hate, but that's the extent of it really. It still prevents like Trick Room from going up if you time it correctly, and so that would be it for Terapagos, I want to say. I think it's a really hard comp to build out because like even though it's so strong, like Terapagos' power budget is also the fact that it's so oppressive into restricted combination of Miraidon alongside one of the Trick Room guys. Like it's so dire that they usually run Choice Band Terra Ghost Urge specifically to beat up on Terrapagos, because otherwise it's so hard to overcome with two restricteds that are not actually putting out strong fighting type damage into their boards for most of the time. With Ursh, you get to play around, Fake Out, and Intimidate, and even then you still have to respect the Mungas, which kind of circles back to what I was saying earlier. I think it works as sort of a meta call-ish mon, but I am a bit skeptical on its ceiling, honestly, especially in the long run. Groudon, I'm honestly kind of unsure. Like, if we go by results, it probably belongs here. Actually, it did well at, what was the event? It did well at Melbourne, I think. Where's the Groudon? I think it was Suika that was running Groudon. This team was honestly like kind of dope. The Brick Break's fun too. I've been messing around with Psychic Fang on Farigiraf for the screens matchup, and this feels a similar purpose. I think it's kind of sick, and I think Kali Ice Groudon could be a pairing that we see more of. There's also a Groudon with Miraidon. It's also a possible combination, and honestly, I would be tempted to put Groudon here. I'm not much of a Groudon believer. I just think that when Miraidon is a 50+% usage restricted, Groudon is bound to find a pocket where it's actually worth considering, especially when it no longer has to carry the burden of being the sole restricted on a team. I would not use it because of P-Blades. P-Blade, all like same reason as Kyogre, really. I think it's kind of shaky in that sense, but it has a niche. I'll put it in B. I think that is plenty fair. And for C tier, we have this guy and we have this guy. I'm not going to rank the other like more niche restricteds like Kyurem White, like Rayquaza, and so on and so forth. I think those like the Necrozmas, I think those guys could show up. There could be a niche for them, but for simplicity's sake, I'll just think about these for now. I think these will be like the ones we'll be seeing the most. Zacian, I think most people would make a case to put it way higher up, like B tier. I'm not a Zacian believer. I think it is shut down way too hard by Incineroar, even when you pair it with Kyogre. And that is a big deal to me because like it means that you have this guy that shines as a combination with another B tier restricted. Like when you have to compete into a field that is these guys plus Incineroar. And then there's the fact that Play Rough is not even fully accurate. I think it's a really shaky pocket monster, honestly. I'm sure some people will prove me wrong, like we'll see some good Swordfish placements throughout the format, probably. But it won't be me. Maybe I'm being too much of a hater, but that's how I feel about Zacian. Eternatus, on the other hand, is a guy most people would expect to see lower. Well, not in S, but you get what I mean. But I believe in Eternatus. I think Eternatus will find a pocket where it becomes like kind of oppressive. I think it's like relatively free flow when it comes to restricted pairings. Like I think it can go with the Kalis. I think it could go with Zama and Lunala. I think it could probably even go with any of the B tier guys. Like Eternatus Terrapagos. Eternatus dunks on fighting types really hard by design if it goes like Flamethrower for Zama. And then like it can be offensive, it can run Cosmic Power. And I think like even when we take Cartridge Timer into account, I think Cosmic Power Zama into people that don't know how to play against it can be really oppressive. Even if you know how to play against it, sometimes those teams have ways of circling around usual counterplay that is like really annoying to deal with, like Fisher Tinglu, Fisher Dondozo, for example. And it slows down the pace of the game so much, even with all of this power, because pressure means that you do not actually get many tries to finish Eternatus off. I think it's a kind of a sick Pokemon, and another funny thing about Eternatus is that it was like dormant for pretty much the entirety of Reg G, and then it shows up at the very last major. It shows up at Safil's special event and just casually gets top 4. I think that's kind of badass, even though I'm not sure how real it actually is. And so I think like somebody will make this guy work. I think it's like such a sick mon on paper. I believe in it. I like it. I'll go ahead and say also that like for the second VR tour for Reg I had a very cool CSR Return to Steam with Dondozo that I'm a bit sad I couldn't take further. It was a really hard schedule and stuff, but we're not here to talk about that. But yeah, I'm gonna turn to Believer. I probably won't be running it at events, but I will be rooting for the people who do so. For Unrestricteds, this is like kind of awkward because this guy right here, I think, is the best Unrestricted in the format. And I will also go ahead and say that this is not a conclusion I came to on my own. I was talking to a friend of mine about Reg I, and he was like, dude, I think Incineroar is way better than it was in Reg G. Like, I'm an Incineroar player, so like, I just click Fake Out, Parting Shot, Knockoff, regardless of the format, and Incin never feels that different to me. But what I ended up realizing during these conversations is that with this guy being so far up, Urshifu Rapid Strike, which I will go ahead and put in A+, is considerably worse. Like, it's pretty telling that even when it's worse, it's still an A+ tier Pokemon, like, minimum. But it's technically harder to bring to games, and I think that makes Incineroar better, because most of the time in Reg G, this guy was the biggest biggest Incin hater. Like, this guy just comes in and beats up on Incin. But right now, it's so much harder to do that with how Ursh actually pairs up into a lot of the restricted. It's not just Miraidon, but it's Miraidon mainly, I would say. The other, like, I'm putting Incin in S mainly because I don't really feel too inclined to put anything in S tier. And Incin is probably the best in restricted, so it kind of just goes there by technicality in my rankings. But I think it is pretty damn good. And for Ursh, like, I don't think I need to develop too much on it, because even if it's not like the best into a lot of the restricted, it still beats pretty much, not all, but I mean such a high amount of unrestricted Pokemon. And like the combination of Fake Out plus Surging Strikes, ignoring Protect, like it just fundamentally breaks the game. Even in matchups where it's like not good, if you're like Scarf or Focus Sash, for example, that give you added longevity, you will still find a way of making Surging Strikes maneuver score positive trades down the line. Like, it's just a fundamentally broken Pokemon, and putting it anywhere that is not here is like kind of criminal. Single Strike, I'll just go ahead and put it here as well, because since I'm touching upon Unseen Fist breaking the game, I think it belongs a lot lower. Like, it's still a pretty good mon, but I think it belongs lower than Rapid Strike because of opportunity cost, and because like it's a lot less versatile, because if you're not running Single Strike with Focus Sash, you're pretty restricted in what you actually get to do with it in game. And Wicked Blow is a worse move than Surging Strikes, because Surging Strikes, it hits this guy for super effective, so you ignore Intimidate, but it also breaks Focus Sashes, which is a pretty big deal into this guy, which we will talk about in a bit. And speaking of Fake Outs, I will also go ahead and put Rillaboom in A+. This is like pretty obvious that these guys are gonna always be at the top, but for Rilla, I think it's actually really funny with the format, because you would think that with Miraidon being as good as it is, that Rilla would be up here or something, but I don't think it quite works out like that, because Miraidon being up also means that it's hard to fit Rilla onto teams, because these two are like fundamentally incompatible on paper. In practice, I don't think it works like that, and we have seen some very cool teams that use double terrain. I don't know, this is a guy that's on the team. We've seen like Doway. I'm a big fan of Doway's team building. Doway made a really cool team that uses Miraidon and Rillaboom together. There was also a really cool team at Utrecht special event that used searching like that's not gonna be fast, but there was this really cool team at Utrecht that ran a Calm Mind Lunala with Rillaboom and then Specs Miraidon. I think this is really cool, and I think it will be a real thing moving forward, honestly. Because even though, like, on paper, it's, like, fundamentally incompatible, in practice, I think that a lot of times you get to just pick and choose how you want to approach the game. Like, Lunala with Leftovers and Grassy Terrain is really oppressive into teams that are not, like, do not break it down fast enough. So, like, you can go these four when that's a win con, and when it isn't, you can just go like Whimsicott Miraidon, you can go Incin Ursh, or you can even go Lunala and just use Lunala as a damage battery, or as a way of detracting focus away from your other guys. I think we will see double terrain a lot more moving forward. It's a pretty intuitive adaptation, especially because in the mirror, like the Miraidon mirrors are oftentimes extremely volatile, as we saw with Michel Kelj versus Hankyu Zhang at Utrecht. Like their set was basically just the Miraidon smashing Dazzling Gleam and hoping they outspeed. And MTB's I think was pretty slow, so he had to do some brain surgery to actually pull it off. And Rilla is a way of like actually finding stability when the team can fit it. Not all teams can though, but I think this guy would be cool. And then there's the obvious synergy with CSR Zama pieces, like just pretty standard balance. And Terapagos also fits it. Kyogre can fit it. It's a good pocket monster. It works very hard. It's put some food on the table for my household before. I like Rillaboom honestly, even though it's got a lot of haters, myself included sometimes. Amogus, I already talked a little bit about it. I think it belongs in A plus. I'm not sure. I like my heart says it belongs in A plus, but if we are being like objective, like accounting for results, like you go here, Bunga's best finish is like top 8. I think it's pretty good. In Santiago, in Brazil, top 4. In Melbourne, I think it got top 4. I think this guy is an A plus pocket monster, even with the Miraidon outbreak, because of what we've already said before, where it's like Miraidon teams don't really hate on Spore that hard usually, aside from electric terrains, so pairing it with Rillaboom, pairing it with Terapagos, or even like just removing the Miraidon fast at the beginning of the game, like Among Us gets to abuse those teams really hard. Like it's Among Us. People will disrespect it at the beginning of formats, and then good players will remind you why that is a bad life decision and do its thing. I think this guy is here to stay, and I think like the reason why these guys, for example, are in B tier, I think, is because they can fit Among Us. We've already said that before. It's a good pocket monster, honestly. Another guy that I think is a big winner in Reg I is Chien Pao. I think it belongs in A plus as well, because aside from Rilla, it is probably the single biggest Miraidon hater with Jolly Focus Sash Ice Spinner, and even the other sets like Life Orb, or even like Adamant on Sash, or with Icicle Crash with Terrain, like it can go on the Miraidon team with not like this. It can go on a team with Miraidon, like Melbourne. Former world champion Shohei Kimura had a really sick team with Chien Pao, Miraidon Zama. Like these three guys are a pretty nasty combination of offense. I really like it. Like it's really flexible in that sense. It goes with this guy, goes with these two guys. Does not really go with Ice Rider anymore, I want to say, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Like could probably even go with these two. It's really good with Kyogre. Like really flexible. Getting hated on by Incin is like kind of bad on paper, but in practice you have to remember that many Chien Pao partners dunk on Incin pretty hard. Like if you have a Pao Zama board, it's really hard for like Incin pretty much has to tear to exist in that scenario. And I think it's synergy with those guys plus Miraidon matchup plus Miraidon synergy. I think it's even better than it was back in Reg G, where it was like kind of limited to being ran on Zama teams. Right now, that's not really the case anymore. It's like goes on a lot more stuff, does really cool things. It's a good pocket monster as well. On the other hand, this is going to be a bit controversial, but I think Chiyu is a bit of a loser when it comes to the format transition. The reason why, in my opinion, is because first of all, I think Scarf is probably, I wouldn't say the only viable set. That's definitely kind of bogus to say, but it's the main set, and I think Scarf Chi-Yu, like its main niche is being an answer to Shadow Rider. Also kind of controls this guy with Snarl, not really. I think it's kind of shaky for that purpose. But basically, Chi-Yu, I think it's a lot harder to use as a tool in the CSR matchup when the CSR has Zama guy next to it. Because like you click Snarl or Heat Wave, and then like you have this fat guy just clicking Wide Guard, neutering what you do. you click overheat and then like they just protect, scout, U-turn, go to redirection, and then your Chi-Yu is also really vulnerable. There's no winning. I think it's tough. I think on paper it's a really good pair with a lot of the special offensive restricteds, but in practice I feel like that running it over Ensign often causes your team to be really vulnerable into Trick Room maneuver. I think that makes it a bit shaky in my opinion. Still good, still has pockets where it can work. And honestly, I think Ruination Chi-Yu is a really cool tech in order to be able to break down Lunala on teams that struggle with the Trick Room mode on Miraidon Lunala, for example. But I am not a big Chi-Yu lover, especially when taking into account accuracy problems as well. Moving on, I'm kind of just going over the mons randomly if you haven't noticed yet, but I think it should make up for an okay viewing experience, I want to say. I think Fluttermane is an A tier Pokemon right now. Some people would put it lower, some people would put it higher, I think. I don't think it's actually an easy Pokemon to rank. The reason why I say this is because I think a lot of Flutter's power right now in the format comes from how good it is with this guy, which I actually put in B tier, so it's like kind of awkward to say that this is an A tier Pokemon when it's like main draw is it being paired with a B tier restricted, but I don't think it's that simple. I think the combination of Koraidon and Fluttermane is really oppressive offensively. And even aside from that, it can also go with some other guys. Like it can go with Pagos. It can be a CSR Zama piece if you're leaning more towards like the Zama partners on your CSR Zama team. There was a really funny Twitter yesterday about how you can tell if somebody was a CSR or a Zama main in Reg G based on how their CSR Zama team looks. And I think if you're a Zama guy, if you're a Reg G Zama guy, Flutter on CSR Zama is definitely a valuable Pokemon. I think it does a lot of cool things. Really oppressive with this guy, as I already said. It's a good pocket monster. A little bit below these two, but still very serviceable for sure. Speaking of good pocket monsters, I think Arthley Mask Ogerpon feels really good as well. I also think like its applications right now are a bit more limited than they used to be in Reg G, because in Reg G I think it was oftentimes the best alternative without a single doubt, but right now it kind of has to compete with this guy for a slot on teams, and I think they're kind of like at a similar power level in current Regulation I format. Volk gets some extra points because not only is it a redirector, but it can also be a win condition. Going back to the team I showed earlier, but I think that this team uses QD Volk with Struggle Bug, and I think like it's really strong as it can be really oppressive in the current matchups. Whereas Ogerpon is a bit more of a not this one. It's a bit more of a like it's a bit more like a pure redirector, if we want to say, but it's a really proactive redirector because its offense is really strong. Like, it didn't have that many people ramping it, but the ones that did, like, you have this very sick CSR balanced team that runs Ogerpon Heartflame to good success. Grassy Glide is really busted with Rillaboom, not only because of the Molt Breaker interaction into Prio Block, but also because, like, it just snipes a lot of things, and sometimes Ogerpon can, less times than in Reg G probably, but it can still kind of act as a third restricted in some matchups. It can be really oppressive offensively, on top of being a good redirector. These two guys are honestly really good. And I think as the format goes on, we will probably see more people finding more cool applications for Arthlame. Like right now I think it's more of a CSR Zama piece, but like Miraidon Arthlame is not completely unheard of, obviously. We had Arubega in Reg G. And I think it's only a matter of time. Let me just see if there were any Arthlame Miraidons in... Yeah, there was this top 16 team by Zachary Weed. I think we will probably end up seeing more teams like these if you can fit fighting resists elsewhere. Like, because Volk's biggest niche as a redirector over Arthlame, in my opinion, like Struggle Bug, I guess, but it's a fighting resist in an archetype where finding fighting resists is not always intuitive. I think that gives it a very cool that gives it a very cool niche as well. This is like completely off left field, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I think this Pokemon is not good. Since we're talking about fighting types, I guess it's in a slate for the VR, the the viability rankings, but like you're not gonna find any Talonflames here, and I doubt this has any talent. Wait, this has one Talonflame with 5-3. Really sick looking team, honestly. I don't think like I will go ahead and just at a bottom row, yeah. Black. No, not here. I didn't want to do this. Okay. Like this, and then like this one, and ranked, and Talonflame goes here. I don't think this guy is going to be causing any. No, we cannot see that. I'm so sorry. I don't think this guy's going to be making any waves in regulation set. I think its niche is very cool on paper, but in practice, what ends up happening is that you have a guy that when it's at full HP, if Farig is on the field, it does not actually get to click offensive moves. I think that's kind of janky. I don't love it. I think it interacts really wonky with format. It's really hard to justify using it over the other Prankster Tailwind guys, which I'm just going to go ahead and rank now. I think Torn belongs here, and I think Whimsicott belongs here. Reason being that, like, when we first got Whimsicott and Scarlet Violet, people still opted to run the Torn, and I think that's because in lower power level formats, the Bleakwind Storm offense is more valuable than defensive utility Whims provides to the board. Like, Torn Nourish was really oppressive back in Regulation Set E. D as well, but Wimps was not in the game. Wimps was I forgot the name of the DLC, but it's from the second DLC, so it didn't really get to compete with Torn in Reg D. And then once we got restricted formats, people started gravitating towards Whimsicott way more because what happens is that Whimsicott has a way better defensive typing into a lot of these guys, which means that it's not just clicking Tailwind and then dropping. And in Torn's case, like, if you're not running Sash, that's what happens in a lot of games. But the other thing is that, like, Torrent's offense is very shaky in wide guard format. Like, you kind of have to run Hurricane a lot of times, I want to say. And for that, you have to exclusively pair it with Kyogre, which I think restricts your... It makes it kind of inflexible compared to Whimsicott. Whimsicott also has a lot of cool options. People are still going for Light Screen because it's what was common last format. But, like, things like Taunt Endeavor... Helping Hand, Weather, Sunny Day, like, could be cool, I think. It's a lot more flexible than Torn, and I think that means it's generally better. That is like my take on the Tailwind setters, honestly. What else should we be looking into? I think Dondozo is like a B tier Pokemon right now, and you cannot talk about Dondozo without talking about some other Pokemon, namely Tatsugiri. This one's really obvious, like without Tatsu we cannot merge, but then there's also Tinglu, because it's not like you need to run these two together. You can also run Tingdozo, and I think Tingdozo as a combination, I wouldn't say it's dead, but I think it's not great into Miraidon format, because it's a lot less streamlined how you want to play. Like, I think you'll be relying on secondary modes a lot more often, like Chi and Pao Zama, for example. I wouldn't say Tingdozo is dead, because I think that's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but it's honestly how I'm feeling about it going off of vibe. However, I think Tinglu is still very good as a solo bring on CSR Zama, for example. And you can also probably employ it in more compositions. One thing with Tinglu that makes it awkward to build with is that its ability means that it's got a little bit of anti-synergy going on with a lot of pieces. Like, Tinglu Miraidon, it could maybe work. I'm pretty sure there are some Japanese teams running around a stadium ladder with these two together. In OTS, I think it's a bit harder to build it like that, but I still think Tinglu has its own pocket where it's good. Probably not with Dozo anymore, but since I was talking about Dozo, it's a good chance to bring up Tinglu. For Dozo, I think it's one of those mons that is hard to rank, because like I was saying at the beginning of the video, the two things that define these sort of rankings are the strength of the Mon itself, like CSR busted, DLC move, high speed, high special attack, but then people have a lot of counterplay to it. And I think Dozo, what happens with Dozo is that it suffers from its own success because when it shoots up in viability, its counterplay like not like its counterplay also goes way up, and then like it starts interacting badly with format, and then it goes back down. Like it's a very because its counterplay is like really effective when when the mon is like actually a cut above everything else when it comes to power level. Like in Reg H, for example, when Dozo starts creeping up, everything just starts running haze, and then that's the end of it. In this format, I think it's different because these guys do so much damage that a lot of teams like just break boosted Dozo, even without those tools. And I think that can actually kind of work in its favor because yes, it will not be great MU wise, but at least it always gets a fighting chance on somewhat even terms. I'm not even sure if that's the best way of wording it, but I think there will always be people ready to make Don Dozo work. Some would even go as far as saying that I'm one of those, but it kind of depends on how I'm feeling about Pocket Monsters game, honestly. And then Tatsu just goes in here by association. I don't really need to explain that, I feel. And then another Pokemon that is really hard to not bring up when you talk about Dozo is Galarian Weezing. And honestly, I think Galarian Weezing is pretty dope right now in a sense, but at the same time, it's hard to build with it. I'm kind of thinking about just putting it in B, and then this Weezing would go one tier below it because the main reason why you'd be running Kanto Weezing is because you do not want to be weak to steel type moves, aka you do not want to be weak to Zacian, which is a real concern on a lot of Dozo teams because it's hard to beat Front. Like if your restricted duo is these two with Dozo Tatsu, it can be really hard to beat some Zacian teams, and in that case you can run Kanto Weezing. But generally the fairy typing is better than what Weezing brings to the table, even though aside from that they're basically the same mon. And I think like the thing with Weezing is that it's kind of like Tinglu in the sense that it actually works without Dozo just fine, but its viability is also deeply tied to it in a sense, synergy-wise. In the sense that a lot of the most successful Weezing teams are just Dozo teams, but right now you have Koraidon CSR Weezing. I am pretty sure it won Melbourne actually. A very offensive-minded team. Like Weezing is here to provide the taunts for the two restricteds that lose to Trick Room, and the fact that it works just fine without Dozo now is a pretty cool draw. But like if you look at it, like actually no, I'm just wrong about this. Everyone's just running Weezing without Dozo now. Although like I'm pretty sure there was a Dozo team at this event, but I think it was Sneasler as the yeah, it was Sneasler as the Toxic Spike Setter. So I'm just talking nonsense right now, but it's a very easy association to make in your head, and I think Weezing provides a very unique toolkit that enables strategies which do not really work otherwise. Like these guys do not really have an easy time fitting Prankster Tail without losing to Trick Room, so they just go Weezing instead and kind of have a matchup there. And I think that's pretty cool. Weezing is also a very dope mon when it comes to what it does in the format. And I'm kind of trying to think of what I'll just do Sneasler since we were talking about it, and I think Sneasler is a weird Pokemon. Like I wouldn't say it's like I wouldn't say it's tied to these two guys because like at Utrecht special event we had one of the Hodge brothers getting top 4 with a very cool Blood Moon Ursa Luna Miraidon Zama team that uses Sneasler for things that are not Dozo enabling. Like it can work without Dozo. I just think like it's such a small niche that it's hard to talk about it very in depth, but it does cool things like Miraidon Synergy, Electric Seed proc, you outspeed most things in our Tailwind. If the Miraidon tries to Tear Fairy, you have Gunk Shot or Dire Claw to put damage onto it. Fighting type damage is also cool. It's one of the few Pokemon in the format that can use the Feint maneuver, which can be kind of cool with Shadow Rider as well. Like if you're building hyper offense with these two guys, it's not like the best Pokemon, but it will be serviceable. Will be serviceable into a lot of things with the right partners, which gives it a spot in B minus next to Kanto Weezing, which is kind of a similar Pokemon if you think about it. Going back to more popular Pokemon, so to speak, the whole talk about Nicolaj's team reminded me of the Ursalunas, and honestly, I think this one is an A+ tier Pokemon. Whereas this one, I would put it exactly where Sneasler and Weezing are. Bloodborne Ursaluna is kind of in an awkward spot. I'm not even sure if there were more. Oh, there was Boyd. There was Boyd. I was gonna say I was not even sure if there were more Blood Moons in Day 2, but there was Jimmy Boyd's team, and there was also Aurelian Lefeur with a very cool Miraidon Ho-Oh team that uses Life Orb or Blood Moon. Blood Moon's kind of awkward because the fact that its speed tier is above base Ursa and then Iron Hands and Calyrex Ice Rider means that it does not actually get to play as a dedicated TR Mon anymore, but it still pumps out some pretty cool damage. I think if you find the right comp for it, it can work. Like Nicolaj and Frederick have been playing Blood Moon for pretty much the entire generation ever since it came out in the first DLC, so those guys will always find a way to make it work, even if it's like Magikarp levels of viable. So it's hard to make a statement based on just that, but Blood Moon itself is like, it's such an insane Pokemon stat-wise that I think there will always be some offensive-minded team that manages to put its toolkit to good use, which is why I think it's still comfortably above Talonflame, for example. And this Ursaluna is a completely different story. This guy had a massive glow up coming into Regulation I, and I think that's because that is directly related to Lunala's increase in viability, because these two guys are a match made in heaven. Like Trick Room Wide Guard next to Ursa spamming Earthquake. This guy is weak to Ghost. This guy is immune to Ghost. This guy is weak to fighting. This guy is immune to fighting and threatens fighting types for really good damage, for example. And then like you also get to throw Miraidon in there, and like you have a really oppressive combination of Pokemon. Ursaluna under Trick Room basically acts as a third restricted. It pretty much OHKOs anything if it's not being mitigated through Intimidate or Reflect, which just reminded me that I still have to rank Grimmsnarl. It's a pretty hard topic to deal with personally. But Ursaluna itself, like, even back in Rank G, I tried to build Lunala Ursaluna a decent amount, and what I often felt was that it was pretty hard to sustain with Lunala as a solo restricted, because of the whole thing I mentioned about power budget being allocated into utility. But right now you get a second restricted to pick up the slack, and I think that really enables those Lunala Ursaluna team concepts to really flourish. I was gonna look up the team, but I don't even need to. This completely dominated the first regional of the season, and its success is looking to carry on into the events we just had this weekend. It's a really strong team. Ursaluna is a big contributor. I think it deserves a spot in A+ right now, even if it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. And speaking of base 50 speed Pokemon, I think Iron Hands belongs here, a cut below Ursaluna, which might be a bit controversial, honestly. And a couple days ago, I probably would have had Hands higher. But I also think it's a bit of a trap in a sense, because, like, what I think usually happens is that when you put Miraidon and Iron Hands together on teams, what usually ends up happening is that, like, it can work, it has good results, but it's also compounding weaknesses to things that are like kind of awkward to play around when you have like for context, I think this is a good team. Obviously, I'm not like opening it up to dunk on it. I'm just trying to like exemplify that when you have Entei, Hens, and Miraidon on the same team, and then like this guy, you end up with teams that are really weak to Landorus Incarnate, And I think that's a big reason why MTB was able to capitalize and get another regional win, another special event win with this guy, because hands kind of causes this weakness compounding, where it's like teams with it and Miraidon turn out to be really weak to ground types, and this guy also capitalizes on it somewhat, even though it has to tear a ghost to get around the low kick Oko. But that's usually a small price to pay for victory. I think Hands is cool, Hands is sick. We will see some good teams with it, especially like Miraidon Ice Rider with Hands is cool. Even Lunala, depending on how format evolves, and Ho also fits it because it goes along with Farigiraf. I think it's a good Pokemon. I just don't think it's as good as these guys, honestly. Grimmsnarl, on the other hand, I'm gonna put it here a bit reluctantly, honestly. I think Grimmsnarl is one of those mons that feels so oppressive when you play against it, because you have to account for screens, for your things getting paralyzed, for Spirit Break controlling your special attackers, or Foul Play threatening to straight up blow up your Calyrex, whichever one of them it is. But when you use it, Thunder Wave misses, you don't get the full pairs that you need. It's a weird pocket monster. I think it's kind of busted. I think it leads to gameplay scenarios that are honestly kind of unfun to navigate. And I kind of hate it. I hope people find out ways of hating on it, because I don't feel like dealing with Grimmsnarl. I'm a Grimmsnarl hater, but even as a hater, you have to recognize that it's very well positioned in the format right now. And speaking of Miraidon partners, I think Farig goes here as well. Farigiraf is another Pokemon that I don't love a whole lot, but you cannot really look at it objectively and say that it's a bad pocket monster, because that's not the case by any means. It was part of the best team in Reg G. It's not really part of the best team anymore, but it's still part of pretty damn good teams. Intuitive Miraidon partner. Prio Hate makes these two guys really sad. It makes a couple others like a little bit less sad, but still sad all the same, like Chienpao, for example. It's pretty good into the Kalis, although like right now that does not matter as much, I want to say, because they actually get a partner that tends to match up better into Farig, but it's still a bit oppressive in that sense. It's not like an offensive behemoth, but it's still enabling things with Helping Hand, Prio Block, sometimes even through the Trick Room threat. And it pairs up with like the 50% usage restricted, so I think putting it below A would be very disingenuous as well. Even if like even if this is where I wish I could put it. Nah, not really. It's not that bad. But since we're talking about that, I'll just go into another mon I hate, and like I think Iron Bundle is not a good pocket monster, honestly. Like Hangyu Zhang got top 8 with it at Utrecht, but if you look at his tweet where he talks about his team, he straight up says that he did not bring Bundle to a single game. And honestly, that does not surprise me. Like, I think the only thing Bundle does is put pressure in the builder, like to prevent the Flood and main Koraidon duo from, not like this, from wrecking havoc. But in practice, it's a lot harder to use. It does not actually do damage. I think Hydro Pump is correct. When I tried Bundle, I had Hydro Pump as well. I even dropped Freeze Dry for Ice Beam because Freeze Dry was so piss weak into a lot of things that I wanted to kill that I kind of had enough with the guy. I don't love Bundle. I think, but like the niche is cool on paper. In practice, I feel like usually you're better off just searching for alternative means of counterplay to the things Bundle's supposed to cover on paper. Like even Miraidon, I don't think Bundle is that great, because like a lot of Miraidon run Assault Vest right now because of the tank team, and a lot of the ones that run specs are paired with speed control. So, and the ones that aren't, like they usually have other ways of dealing with Bundle. Like, yeah, you can catch the Miraidon lead with Bundle, but then they lead Ice Rider plus something that enables the Trick Room setup, and your Bundle is very sad. It's a mon that, in order to do its thing, it tends to adhere to a lead roulette that is honestly not how I enjoy playing Pokemon personally. That bias kind of gets in the way of me giving Bundle a better rating, honestly. Are there like any other blatantly good guys that I'm forgetting about? I think Lando I already talked about it a bit. I think it capitalizes really well on a lot of Miraidon teams' weaknesses. I'm a bit reluctant on putting it higher than A minus slash B plus because speed tier is a concern. MTP's Lando was really slow even. Like it just bulked out of its mind because there's no use contesting speed with a lot of the things that are good in the format right now. But the offensive coverage this guy provides is very good, very unique, and very high synergy with like Miraidon Ice Rider. And I think that gives it a niche as a very solid offensive threat, even if right now like its offense is like it's more like Trick Room offense than it is Tailwind offense, even though like technically it can play in both. Like the other tank team from Reg G that had Ice Rider and Landorus. The other Landorus I think belongs here. It's one of those things that is cool in a vacuum because it intimidates Ursaluna, resists Earthquake, it's immune to Electro Drift, can run Assault Vest to survive Draco. It has like a defensive niche on paper. In practice, its moves are terrible. It's a U-turn bot. Like Stomping Tantrum does not cut it as a main stab option. And then for flying type damage, you have to Terra Blast, Terra Flying, which means you're weak to Electric, which is not great, but like the niche exists on paper, and for that reason, I will actually go out of my way to rank it. Even though in practice, I'm not expecting Lando T to become a mainstay in the format by any means. Two other guys I would put in the rankings for similar reasons are Rhydon and Raichu, which is like kind of weird. Like, but for example, Rhydon had 153 at this event. I know 5.3s are not like a good metric for viability, but in a 50% Miraidon format, I think somebody is going to make this guy work inevitably. It had some placements in Reg G, for example, like at UIC, I think there was a Rhydon that went I thought he went A3 for some reason, but it's still a Rhydon in day 2, which is pretty crazy. We also had Eternal Snowman, Michael Zhang in top 32 of Milwaukee with a pretty nutty team. Like, I feel like these two will always have these pockets where they're fringe viable just off the fact that they discourage electric move clicking from the best Pokemon in the format. Raichu had, I think, a good finish in Santiago, top 8. Estefan with a pretty cool team. Zama, Lunala. Here's the Ursaluna Lunala combination. Snarl Zama's cool. And then this guy's just here to be a really big Miraidon hater. And like, I wonder if it had a yeah, it had two placements here. Two 5.3s. And 174 here with Kai. Yeah, it's a really good Kyogre partner as well. Let me just see the set real quick. Yeah, it's usually Assault Vest or Focus Sash. I think there will always be one crazy guy that needs the perfect 6-mon to stop Miraidon. Instead of rebuilding a new, they'll just put one of these two. And then sometimes that's actually the correct play. Not really much else to say about them other than that, honestly, because that's like the extent of their niche. What else should we be looking into? More Miraidon haters. I think this guy's great. I think Iron Treads is awesome. Wait, not this one. I think Iron Treads was awesome. I feel like it will always have some amount of representation just off the fact that it is both a Miraidon partner and a Miraidon hater. So if you want to be mirror positive, it's like one of your best bets, honestly. Very good coverage. Like, it's not like it only deals with Miraidon. Like, it also outspeeds and knocks off CSR. There's good damage into this. Good damage into this. Can knock this off. This guy does not care about it. But aside from, like, the B-tier restrictions are a lot better into Treads, but it has an interesting matchup spread, which I think justifies it on a lot of Miraidon teams. Similarly, I think Iron Valiant's like kind of cool. searching for eyes is so annoying. It's kind of cool. USC finalist Dylan Yeomans had a cool finish in Utrecht using Iron Valiant, for example. Milwaukee, I think you also had some Iron Valiants. Wait, no, I'm searching for the wrong letter. Yeah, 7 Iron Valiants. Where is it? 7 Iron Valiants, top 16, 10-1, really strong. I already opened up this team before in this video, but you get the idea. Good Miraidon Ice Rider partner, gets to coach this guy, gets to get a speed boost. It could also maybe work on other Ice Rider comps once those are found and explored. Can Spirit Break Miraidon from above. Can discourage Dragon type move locking. Provides Wide Guard agility, coaching, Encore, disable. It's like if this was a closed team sheet tier list, it would probably go here, but we will be a little bit less generous with this placement considering the circumstances. But it's a cool Pokemon. I'm sure we will be seeing a lot of it. Similarly, I think Iron Crown has a very interesting matchup spread in the format. I'm a bit reluctant to put it higher. I know I've been digging up results too much, but it's a pretty nice crutch, honestly. I hope you guys can forgive me for doing this. But it's also like cool to have a reference point. Riley, of course, still repping the Iron Crown. I'm pretty sure this is just his Reg G team, but with an Iron Crown instead, with a Terapagos over something else. I think it was Ursaluna even. Iron Crown, Terra Ground, Terra Blast, really good into this. Get speed boost from this. Can also play with Entity Female, which we have not ranked yet. Yeah, it's still here. When on like Koraidon Size Spam, if you're not running Shadow Rider. Although, like, I think that, like, if you want an Expanding Force clicker with Koraidon Reg-I, you probably just run Shadow Rider. So I would say this guy's niche is pretty much limited to Miraidon team. Tachyon Cutter into Xianbao is cool and stops one of these guys' biggest haters. I think that's an interesting niche, honestly. Very cool matchup spread. Although the fact that its niche is kind of limited keeps me from putting it higher than CC minus. Bruce. I love Bruce. Bruce is so cool. I think it kind of fell off at this event, if my memory is like not failing me. Yeah, not very good conversion going into day 2. But I still think Bruce is kind of dope. Like, it's weird to have Amogus in A+ and Bruce in A- when this guy was better than this guy at the first event of the season. But what I think happens is that Bruce's viability is so deeply tied to Koraidon. Like, I'm not ranking Koraidon high, and like Koraidon did not convert amazing in Utrecht either. So like, it's hard for me to put it higher than this off of principle. Again, maybe a knee-jerk reaction, but I just think that Amogus typing and traits are better than Bonnet's right now because Amogus like has more longevity, gets to play more drawn-out game, gets to buff partners. This also gets Poland buff, but it's harder to fit onto its moveset. Plus, its partners don't benefit from it as much. Like, you're not using Bruce with Terapagos, for example. You're using it with Koraidon Kali, Koraidon Lunala. And like, puffing Lunala is cool, but Lunala on Koraidon does not generally go super bulky, I want to say. I was like about to change to Lunala, but I could just look at what I wanted to. Like this, like Robbie had a cool leftovers Lunala team with Koraidon. And on this type of team, like, he didn't even have Bruce, but in that case, I think Bruce is like can actually kind of justify Poland buff when otherwise it's a bit of a tough sell. Let's check something real quick. Yeah, like zero Poland buff usage. And like, its viability is tied with Sun. You can boost their energy, but then you do not have Helmet, do not have Cloak, and you're slightly worse. So like, that's the end of the conversation. Speaking of niche grass type redirectors, I think Sinistcha, I would probably put it in here. We already went over Dawei's team earlier. this is like a similar variant. Deal also had Sinistra, and then like none of the others converted into Day 2, but still Sinistra providing healing over Mungus kind of gives it a niche. The other thing I think gives it a niche is the fact that its power budget is not allocated into Spore, which means that it's a better Miraidon partner than Amogus is. And then you're healing your Miraidon, you're healing your Ice Rider slash Lunala, maybe Zamazenta. I don't know if that would fit Sinistra, but it's a cool pocket where it gets to function. It hates really hard on Zamazenta, but it loses to Shadow Riders. Like it's only like okay into like it's only a cool Zama answer to specific Zama pairings like Zama Miraidon for example, but not really Zama CSR. But it redirects the body press. Like in some boards, it can be fine. It can also set up Trick Room. Like I think it's sleeper good with Ice Rider Miraidon. Really is where most of my excitement regarding Sinistra comes from, honestly. Going into the niche grass types. Niche. That's a weird thing to say when we still have all of the ogre pawns. So I guess I will just start with those. We also have Wo-Chien. I'll just be a contrarian and start with Wo-Chien. I think Wo-Chien probably goes here. It's one of those mons that has a niche on paper. This is not a very good result. Let me see the team just out of curiosity. This is not a very good result. I think like the team is fundamentally kind of sick. And another thing I think you can do with this regional have Wo-Chien. Dude, where's Marco Perez when you need him? Not like this. I think in theory there has to be a team for Wo-Chien out there somewhere. Like the thing people did with this guy in Kyogre, courtesy of Chileang Tang once again, mastermind team builder. I think you could try to replicate that in Regulation Set I and probably be okay. Even though like synergy off of B tier restrict is like a very compelling reason for a ranking, but I think there's things to love here. Like it hates on this guy slightly. It's an electric resist. I'm not really even doing a good job convincing myself, but it has a niche technically. As for the Ogre Pawns, I think Cornerstone Ogre Pawn is in a very weird position, even though like it's more used than Arthflame. I'm not convinced that it is actually better than Arthflame. Something Cornerstone does that I kind of value in this format is that it dunks on this guy, which is cool for some comps. Like if you're looking at the unrestricted rankings with a close attention, you will realize that there's very little to no rock type damage here. And Cornered Pawn is like the best rock type attacker in the format, which in and out of itself is a niche. Has cool finishes, is a very important piece on Terrapagos teams generally, because sturdy redirection is really solid on those, but it can also work with other guys. The one thing that worries me and keeps me from ranking it higher is the Zamazenta matchup. I think Zamazenta voids it so badly, and like you're compounding Zama weeks with Terrapagos. Like I guess that a lot of times with Terrapagos, all you need is that one turn when you're redirecting the body press, so you can chunk it with Earth Power or Starstorm if you read the Terra. So it's not like super relevant as a problem in that application, but it still keeps me from being able to look at it with a more open mind. I actually completely forgot that Corner Pawn got second place at Milwaukee, honestly. And I know for a fact that Melbourne had this guy as well because of Jude Lee getting second place. I mean, it's like the standard Terrapagos balance right now. Here's the Flutter main, like I was saying earlier. It's like fine, I guess. And then the other two were like way more niche than Corner Pawn and Arthflame. I was not even sure if there were any at this event like placing decently. And then the other ogre pawn basically doesn't exist. So the way I would go about it is that, like, I would put this ogre pawn down, not here. I don't think it's that dire. Like, it's tough. Like, I like something I like about this ogre pawn is that, like, your Terra is a really interesting tool into, like, Scarf Rapid Strike, for example, and also into Focus Sash mons like Chien-Pa. You compare it with Chien-Pa to have a strong Bullet Seed. You compare it with Ice Rider for pure Grass type redirection. And like Incineroar Hate with Defiant ability. Like, you can open Ice Rider Ogre Pawn. Your Ice Rider can run Nevermelt Ice Orb leftovers, and you have an Intimidate Hater. It has a niche on paper, although in practice, like, it does not quite convert. I feel like, yeah, it's also not here, but I feel like at some point somebody will make a cool team that uses this guy. And then not Arthflame. I think Wellspring, like, it did well at this event. Paul Chua and the gang had a cool Ice Rider team that ran Wellspring. I'm not 100% sure why it ran Wellspring. Like, maybe I'm just being oblivious. But it's technically better and more represented than the other Ogre Pawn, but still not enough that I would feel any comfortable putting it higher than this. It's like my read on it. It's like it's a more offensive minded redirector. Like, with the other ogre pawns, like, they're redirected, but you always have to account for the possibility of Ivy Cudgel just critting one of your guys and winning the game on the spot. Whereas Wellspring, like, it's interesting because they're the same Pokemon with the same base stats and stuff, but Wellspring feels like it's weaker a lot of times. It's a really interesting dynamic. But, like, it's definitely not as offensively capable as Arthflame, because Arthflame gets the attack boost and Cornerpone gets the rock stat, both of which are, like, better offensive tools than offensive water damage. Like, for that application you have Urge, and people needing to respect Urge means that they will respect water type Ivy Cudgel more as well as a side effect. I think most of the mons we have left to rank are, like, not super. There's this guy right here that I think I'll just go ahead and give a placement to because it's, like, way more format relevant than everything else we have left. Like, these are just fringe viable guys for the most part, unless I'm, like, missing something really obvious. The thing with Raging Bolt, like, a lot of people would make a case to put it in A plus next to these guys. I don't think that's where it belongs, at least not right now. First of all, like, as a Ice Rider partner, Miraidon just goes over Bolt on a lot of teams. Bolt's niche is, like, being an Ice Rider partner when your second restricted is not Miraidon. Like, Koraidon, Ice Rider, Bolt is a cool 3-mon combination, and Bolt actually gets to do things there. It's also a CSR Zama piece, like, lots of CSR Zama running Raging Bolt, because, like, you cannot have a Miraidon there, obviously. And Raging Bolt kinda just fills that void where it's like a Miraidon for teams that have 2 other restricteds. My problem with Raging Bolt usually is that, like, on the CSR teams that run it, is that Miraidon feels like, not Miraidon, Raging Bolt feels like it's a ball of stats. Like, it's there to contribute damage, and then its offensive utility, its defensive utility, I mean, is kind of lackluster, even though it has so many defensive stats as well. But it's not actively contributing much defensively to matchups. Like, you're not pivoting it in and out, especially when a lot of the Raging Bolts, like, want to run this and then they run Draco Meteor as well. Like, I think it's a really awkward Pokemon in a lot of situations. I'm not, like, the biggest Raging Bolt fan, even though I acknowledge that it's a very good pocket monster, especially when in so many games you'll be receiving Electric Drain boost, you'll be receiving Sun boost, from one of these 2 guys, usually this one. Like, it's a cool mon. I am probably underselling it. I probably undersold it in Reg G as well. I was never that high on Raging Bolt even back then. Like, as a CSR player that thinks about Raging Bolt, like, as a piece on CSR teams, I would throw Raging Bolt in there and, like, never be satisfied, because the way it wins matchups is by damage and Thunderclap, and, like, damage is cool, but Thunderclap oftentimes feels unreliable as a revenge killing tool. like it's only really reliable when it's there to stack a Scarf Urge, for example, and even in that case, like Terrifier, Terra Ogre Pawn, not Ivy Cut, so Grassy Glide snipes the Urge as well. Rilla also helps a lot into the Urge with Prio, and then I felt like Bolt was kind of redundant in those cases. Still a very good Mon, especially like on things that are not Shadow Rider, because like it also goes with this. So that's about it for Raging Bolt. And then these last couple guys, I'll just go over them kind of quickly to avoid making the video that much longer than it already is. I think Roaring Moon, let me just check results for Roaring Moon real quick. I don't remember seeing much of it actually. It's a good Kyogre partner. That's cool. This team is sick. I like this. This is motion. I would not be able to come up with this myself, honestly. Really cool combination of Pocket Monster, like Weezing, Roaring Moon, like it's like a Dozo team without the Dozo. I like it. That is a cool creation. Like the gist of Roaring Moon is that it's like a Kyogre partner in essence. Like it's really good on Kyogre, like especially Kyogre teams that are like overly reliant on just blowing things up with Prankster Tailwind. Like Kyogre with Ice Rider, then like Roaring Moon or Iron Juggler, I think it's a cool 3-mon combination that puts these guys as traits to use. Honestly, how did Jugglies do? A bit worse. 8-3 is a good record though. Kyogreization. I'm pretty sure this guy was running a similar team in Reg G with Farigiraf over one of these guys, and then like just mismatch the modes and try to throw you off with Prio Block and stuff. I think Roaring Moon and Juggles are very similar Pokemon in what they do, but Roaring Moon is generally better because of stats and defensive typing. Like they're better for the most part. I would probably throw Roaring Moon in here for now, and then I would throw Iron Juggles in here. Two interesting fast Tailwind options, and like this guy right here, that go along with Kyogre. Juggles especially, I think, has to be with Kyogre, because if it's not with Kyogre, your stab options are 70% accurate Hurricane, or just very low base power Air Slash, and then it's kind of underwhelming. It's not really contributing much to the board besides clicking Tailwind, sometimes even Taunt. Miraidon Kyogre had a really good result in Utrecht as well. Like undefeated in Swiss, and these kind of teams, I think, like you could fit an Iron Juggles in here to maybe compensate for the fact that you don't resist Astro Barrage otherwise. It's an interesting application. Most like Kyogre, Miraidon, and then Iron Jugglers with Covered Cloak, and just try to get the best of both worlds. I would not consider it much as a solo Miraidon partner. I think it's tied to Kyogre. This guy not as much, which is like coupled with stats and flexibility. Like I think Roaring Moon is higher, but they're very similar Pokemon in what they do. Clefairy, I used to be a big Clefairy fan in Regulation Set G, but right now I think it's a lot harder for CSR teams to lean that way, because in Regulation Set G it was easier to run Shadow Riders that lean towards slow boosting more, and right now I think the way CSR works is more so as a damage battery rather than a boosting win condition, and Clefairy's viability is like pretty much exclusively tied to slow CSR's viability. It can also go on faster CSR, but it's like way less efficient in those cases. So it's a hard Pokemon to it's a hard Pokemon to rank high, even though I like it and wish I could do so. I would probably just put it I guess we can be generous on this one. Like I'll just say it's C+ in the spreadsheet. That seems about fair to me. Smeargle is interesting. Just out of curiosity, I'd say these are plenty fine results. Oh look, a nice Red Kyogre team. I kind of wanted to go over one of those. Transform Smeargle, wild. Transform Smeargle is really cool. Also has the Roaring Moon, like I was like Roaring Moon Kyogre makes plenty sense. It's a cool team. I like it. I didn't actually pay much attention to it the first time I was looking at these. Smeargle generally goes with this guy or this guy generally. There's been some talk around Terrapago Smeargle from what I've gathered. I'm not like 100% sold on it. I think Smeargle does cool things, and as a consequence, I would probably put it a little bit above Clefairy. Like, it's a more offensive-minded redirector on CSR Zama, but then like it's also a really annoying disruptor with the Trick Room restricteds. I think it's a cool pocket monster. Definitely fills a niche that nothing else does because like combination of Follow Me, Wide Guard. Then it also decorates if you're into running it with Trick Room restricteds. It's a cool pocket monster. I would say I'm a Smeargle enjoyer, but I think saying that in the context of VGC might get you some side glances. So I'm not sure if I might just cut this from the video. Ditto. I thought Ditto would have converted a lot better in Utrecht. I think it had some good finishes in Milwaukee, courtesy of Joe UX9. Yeah, Joe UX9 was the best Ditto. Ditto is weird. Like, on paper, it should be better with 2 restricteds to copy. In practice, I think the way team building works in this format makes it that it's harder to actually fit in Ditto, and not only is it harder, but it also has its niche taken by other Pokemon. Like, for example, a lot of teams used to run Ditto to deal with Shadow Rider, for example, but right now you have these 2 guys as second restricted options, and then Ditto is kind of invalidated on teams that have those 2, for example. It's like, I still think it's a very good Pokemon. Won't be the last we hear of it. I just don't think it's as good as it should be considering the circumstances. Okay. Last couple of guys. Walking Wake actually won Melbourne Regionals. I think this is the first Walking Wake victory. Big dub for the Walking Wake enjoyers all over the world. Walking Wake, how did it do elsewhere? A top 64 here. This seems really cool. Zach Groudon's really interesting. Like, we're back to Sword Shield. How did Walking Wake do here? I know ESM. Yeah, ESM was Walking Wake's strongest soldier. I think Walking Wake does something really cool for Koraidon teams, where it's like Koraidon generally has a very hard time dealing with rain, and we still have to rank Pelipper, I just remembered. But Walking Wake works in a way where it's like if rain comes up, it does not really care. Like, its offense still works plenty fine in rain, even though it's a little bit weaker because you get 1 less multiplier. But like, it's also pretty much the only water type that you can fit on Koraidon without being anti-synergistic, and I think that's pretty dope. Feels a cool niche on those teams, also with Groudon kinda, but like a bit less common. Speaking of weather, Pelipper, I think probably just goes here. I'm kind of surprised. I thought we would be seeing a lot more Pelipper coming into this format. Like, more restricted means more spread damage, but I guess it also means more wide guard mons, which means that like you're a lot less hard pressed to run Pelipper on your teams, because now you can upgrade that to Zama or Lunala, and Pally is a lot less justified. I still think it has a place in the format, honestly, with very specific restricted duos like the aforementioned. I was gonna say Astrated Kyogre, but that sounds really bad. Nah. I'm kind of trolling with that one, but regardless of that, I think Pelipper. There will always be a team for Pelipper in Scarlet Violet restricted format, honestly, even if it's not like the best team in the format. And like all of the guys we have left, I am not like super massive on any of them, so I'll just keep it short. I think Serena goes here. It's a cool pocket monster on Kyogre compositions, but it's pretty much limited to those, and I think that cuts away at its viability. Even Kyogre with some of its restricted pairings, like Miraidon, for example, like it can just run Farigiraf and also be okay. It can also run no Prio Block if it's a more balanced Kyogre build. So Torina is limited to some Kyogre teams, not even all of them, and the fact that it did go undefeated in Swiss at Utrecht, but like even then it's the only Serena. It's a very specific composition. I think it's a very one note Pokemon, even though it's good in its niche sometimes. Dragonite, I think probably Dragonite and Entei are kind of like, I wouldn't say the same Pokemon because in Reg I the Sacred Fire advantage matters a lot more because you're actually doing something into Zamazenta or threatening something at the very least. So the way I would go about this is that I would put Entei here and I would put Dragonite here. Let me just see if there were any results for Entei here. Oh, top 8. Right. Yeah, this team was really... This is a team I was like kind of bashing on because of the ground weakness thing, but I think it's a cool team. And I think like even if it's weak to ground on paper, you have ways of working around that through other means. Like I think Entei feels a cool niche as a Chien-Pao partner in a format where Dragonite does not really have a stab move that it wants to click. One representant 5-3. I think Dragonite is kind of washed. It's a very sad story considering it won the last Reg G event, but we cannot have it all. I know the Japanese like Scale Shot on Dragonite still. I've seen that going around in Battle Stadium, but even so, I'm not like the biggest believer of Dragonite right now. As for these last four mons, I think Annihilate goes here as well, like maybe here on a good day. But the thing with Annihilate is that like it's just Koraidon. it's Annihilate but restricted. Jokes aside, I think Annihilate loses a lot of its power budget due to the fact that Hard Trick Room is a lot worse, and that's like the main teams that used to accommodate for Annihilate. Like I'm sure Scar Final Gambit will still do some things for some teams, but it's a lot less widely usable, and it was not even that used before in the first place. Once we got to restricted formats, Inity is probably the best mon of the batch, and even then, I'm also kind of an Inity hater. I would put it right here. Let me just check how it that's a lot more entities than I was expecting, honestly. I thought there would be way less. I think NDD, I put it here. I think NDD Koraidon Lunala is really cool because enabling your Lunala to run Expanding Force means that you actually have a restricted that deals spread damage for that duo, and I think that can be really oppressive on occasion. But that's the only team composition where I feel like super strongly about NDD. I feel like most other restricted pairings that would think about them on can get away with other things. It's like technically cool for terrain changing into Miraidon, but it's not like Rilla where you actually resist electric moves. Like if you switch NDD and on a Miraidon, you're just, even with Electric Seed, you're just gonna get popped by Electric Drift. Especially considering that NDD likes running defense generally, kind of has to redirect certain things away from partners. So it's not as appealing as Miraidon Hate compared to Rillaboom Guy. Screamtail I think is kind of weird because its main niche back in Reg G used to be as Terapagos partner for the Encore disable on the secondary mode. Right now, CSR kind of does that for Terapagos, but better. I still think Screamtail is worth considering. Was Screamtail worth considering? I hate that I'm relying on this crutch so much, but is Screamtail worth considering? I'm so sorry. This is stuff. Like, on paper, it's unique. In practice, I'm not even sure what sort of team would even benefit from running Screamtail right now. It's very awkward. It's very awkward. I'll just put it here now. And Torkoal. I would love to put Torkoal here too, but I cannot do that in good faith. I think as long as the Hard Trick Room players exist, there will always be somebody making Torkoal work. Like, It's only a matter of time until Diego Ferreira shows up at Worlds with this guy on a Calyrex Ice Rider, Necrozma Dawnwings, or Lunala team and actually gives Torkoal a good finish in Reg I. This guy is like the poster child of Hard Trick Room, and even though Hard Trick Room is in a pretty bad position right now, it's one of those things that you can never count out because people, like, it's not Torkoal, but people will always find ways of making this playstyle work, and even though it's not on this team, Torkoal is more likely than not to be on a Hard Trick Room team. And so I think it will always show up at some point. For the VGC's community, for the VGC community's dismay. Anyway, that is all of the Mons ranked. I'm still not sure if I'm going to upload this, but if I do, thank you very much for watching until the end. And I would love to say I'd see you on the next video, but I do not actually have that much time to upload content regularly. So I'm not sure when that will be, but if it does happen, I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.